This is my true story. I was a father who worked his whole life to give his only son a future better than mine. I paid for his school, his car, even his first home. I trusted him with everything I had, including my savings. But one day, I woke up to find every cent gone. My own blood had stolen from me and left me with nothing. I didn't scream. I didn't fight. I waited. And when his wedding day came, I gave him a gift he'd never forget. Before I tell you what happened, tell me where you're watching from and what time it is. And please subscribe so my story can reach more people. I was not a rich man, but I was a steady one. Every dollar I made came from sweat and long hours on job sites. I worked construction, rain or shine, for over 40 years. My hands were hard, my back was sore, but my heart was proud because I had a reason: my son. From the day he was born, I promised he would never live the kind of hard life I did. When he was a boy, I skipped meals so he could have new shoes. When he turned 16, I sold my old truck to buy him his first car. When he went to college, I emptied half my savings to pay the tuition. I never complained once. Watching him succeed made me feel rich enough. Every paycheck I earned went into 2 accounts, one for the house and one for my future. I didn't spend on vacations or new clothes. I just wanted to build something stable so that when I got old, I wouldn't be a burden on anyone. That second account was my safety net. I called it my quiet fund. It was my promise to myself that I would never have to depend on anyone, not even my son. But I still told him about it because I trusted him. He was my only child. The thought of him ever hurting me never even crossed my mind. As he grew older, things started to change. He stopped visiting as much, stopped calling unless he needed something. He got a good job, started living well, and began looking down on me like I was just a reminder of where he came from. Still, I didn't say a word. Parents forgive before they're even asked to. I kept telling myself he was busy, that he was just adjusting to adult life. I made excuses for his coldness because I couldn't face the idea that maybe he didn't care anymore. Even then, I still kept helping. When he wanted to buy his new house, I gave him money for the down payment. I signed papers he said were temporary. When he wanted to start a business, I handed over more savings. He promised it was safe. He said, "It's your name, Dad. You'll always be protected." I believed every word. Looking back, I realize I didn't see what was happening because I didn't want to see it. The signs were there. He stopped saying thank you. He stopped visiting unless he needed a check signed. He started talking to me like I owed him something. When I asked how the business was doing, he would brush me off. "Fine," he'd say, like I was annoying him. I still thought maybe one day he'd see everything I'd done and finally be proud to call me his father again. But that day never came. That money wasn't just cash sitting in a bank. It was every year of my life. It was all the meals I skipped, the birthdays I worked through, the holidays I missed. It was the roof over his head and the reason he got to stand tall in life. Every time I looked at my son, I felt it was worth it, until the morning I found out what he had done. That morning changed everything. It wasn't just about the money, it was about betrayal. I gave him everything because I loved him. He took everything because he didn't. It started like any normal morning. I went to the grocery store near my house to buy a few things: milk, bread, and my medicine. When I reached the counter, my card got declined. I thought maybe the machine was broken. I tried again. Declined. The cashier looked at me with pity and asked if I had another card. I used the second one. Same result. I felt my chest tighten. That account had always been full. I walked out with empty hands and went straight to the bank. At the counter, I asked the clerk to check my balance. She typed for a while, her face changed, and she said the words that still echo in my head. "Sir, there's nothing left." I asked her to check again, thinking she made a mistake. She turned the screen toward me. Balance, 0. Every cent gone. My entire life savings, everything I had worked for, gone in one day. I asked for a statement printout. Line by line, I read the transactions. Transfers, large ones, all done within the past week. The destination name repeated again and again: my own son. I remember just staring at the paper, my hands shaking. My mind went blank for a few seconds, like I couldn't process what I was seeing. I walked out of the bank and sat on a bench outside. People passed by, cars moved, the world went on like nothing happened, but mine had stopped. I didn't want to believe it. I thought maybe it was some kind of mistake. I called his number. No answer. I called again. Still nothing. That night, I didn't eat. I just sat in my chair, holding those papers, looking at his name printed in black ink on every line. The money was gone. My retirement, my emergency fund, everything. The next morning, I went to his house. He opened the door with a smile, holding his phone, wearing expensive clothes, acting like nothing happened. I asked him about the money. He didn't even blink. He said it was just a loan, that he needed it for investments. Then he said something that burned into my memory, that I was old, that I wouldn't need it for long anyway. Then he laughed. My own son. He closed the door in my face. I stood there for a few seconds, staring at that door, and felt my hands shaking again. But this time, not from shock, from something else. I realized I had raised someone who no longer saw me as a father, but as an obstacle. I walked back home slowly. My legs hurt, but not as much as my heart. That night, I didn't cry. I didn't call anyone. I sat at the kitchen table, staring at the papers again, and made a decision. I wasn't going to beg. I wasn't going to plead. I wasn't going to scream. If he thought I was too old to fight, he was about to learn how wrong he was. That day broke something inside me, but it also built something new. Determination. He took my savings thinking I was weak, but he forgot where that money came from. It came from years of discipline, sacrifice, and focus, the same qualities that could destroy him just as easily. The next morning, I walked to his house again. I didn't go there to talk. I went there to see his face one more time before I started what I had to do. He lived in a big suburban home, the one I helped him buy years ago. I stood at the gate and watched him come out, wearing an expensive suit, holding car keys that cost more than my yearly salary. He saw me and smirked. That was all it took for me to know he didn't feel even an ounce of guilt. I stepped closer and asked one simple question. Why? He shrugged, said it wasn't personal, that he had plans, and I wouldn't understand. Then he turned and walked back inside. He didn't invite me in. He didn't even look back. I stood there for a long time, feeling the wind against my face, realizing the person I had raised wasn't the same man standing behind that door. He was something else now, greedy, heartless, and full of pride. He used to tell me he wanted to make me proud. Now he didn't even see me as family. The car he drove was bought with my money. The ring on his fiancée's finger came from the same account. I knew because I recognized the pattern of withdrawals. Every piece of comfort in his life had my fingerprints on it. Yet he stood there acting like he had built it all on his own. When I left that house, I didn't feel like a father anymore. I felt like a stranger who had been robbed by someone wearing his son's face. On the walk back home, I went through everything in my head. The documents, the transactions, the dates. I remembered that some accounts were joint, others were in my name only. He must have forged my signature. That's when I realized this wasn't just betrayal. It was a crime. For a moment, I thought about letting it go. Maybe just walk away and live whatever years I had left in peace. But then I thought of every hour I'd worked, every time I went hungry so he could eat, every promise he broke, and every lie he told. No, I couldn't let that go. Not this time. That night, I went through my drawer and found every document I had. Bank statements, property papers, tax slips. I spread them all out on the table and started organizing. It took me hours. My hands were slow, but my mind was sharp. I knew what I was doing. I wasn't building anger. I was building a case. I still didn't tell anyone. I didn't call the police right away. I wanted everything perfect first. I knew he thought I was weak and confused. I knew he believed he could outsmart me. That's what made it easier. He wasn't watching me anymore. He thought I was done. But I was just getting started. That confrontation at his door wasn't a defeat. It was a warning, though he didn't realize it. He laughed in my face and thought he had won. But while he slept in that big house, I was awake at my kitchen table with files and evidence. I was preparing the kind of lesson no father should ever have to teach his son, but one he had earned. The days after that confrontation were the hardest of my life. My savings were gone. My pension payments were delayed because the account they went into had been emptied. I had nothing left to live on except a few crumpled bills in a drawer and a half-empty fridge. I stopped buying proper meals. Most days I ate bread with water. Sometimes I skipped eating altogether and just drank coffee to fill my stomach. The lights stayed off at night because I wanted to save on the bill. The house that once felt full of life now felt cold and hollow. I started pawning small things, my old watch, some tools from the shed, a few pieces of furniture I didn't need. Each sale bought me another week of food. I didn't tell anyone what happened. I didn't want pity. My neighbors probably thought I was just getting old and downsizing, but the truth was uglier. My son had stolen everything, and I was surviving day by day, pretending to still be okay. One afternoon, I saw his photos on social media. He was out eating at expensive restaurants, smiling, wearing designer suits, taking vacations with his fiancée. Every post was a reminder that he was living the life I built for him with the money he took from me. I scrolled through the pictures until I couldn't take it anymore. I turned off the phone and just sat in silence, staring at the floor. The hunger didn't bother me as much as the humiliation did. I wasn't angry that I had to eat bread. I was angry that I had to live like a beggar because my own son made me one. Every time I passed by a mirror, I didn't see a father anymore. I saw an old fool who trusted the wrong person. That pain burned deeper than any hunger could. Still, I didn't break. Each day I wrote down what I remembered about the stolen money, dates, amounts, even the reasons he gave for needing it. I created a timeline, one detail at a time. It kept my mind sharp and my purpose alive. I couldn't afford to eat well, but I could still fight smart. There were moments I almost gave up. Cold nights when my body ached and my stomach growled, and I thought maybe I should just let it go. But then I'd remember his voice, the arrogance, the laugh, the way he said I wouldn't need that money anymore. That single memory would wake me up like a slap across the face. It reminded me what I was fighting for, not revenge, but respect. I couldn't make him love me, but I could make him regret underestimating me. He thought age made me weak, but what he forgot was that age also made me patient. I had time. I had discipline. I knew how to wait for the right moment to strike. And I was willing to starve if it meant seeing justice served. That's how the hunger changed me. It stripped me of comfort, but it gave me clarity. Every night in that quiet, empty house, I became stronger in my resolve. I wasn't just a broken man anymore. I was a man with a plan, and he was going to see what happens when the man he stole from decides to stop forgiving. I started gathering every document I still had. Bank statements, receipts, old letters, even small notes I had written over the years. I stacked them all on my kitchen table until the pile looked like a record of my whole life. Each paper had a memory, and now, proof of what he'd done. I went line by line through every transaction, dates, amounts, signatures. I saw large withdrawals that I never made. I saw my name written in ways I never wrote it. The handwriting was mine, but not really. It was a copy. He had forged my signature more than once. I didn't panic. I wrote everything down on a yellow pad, one column for dates and another for amounts. I marked every suspicious transfer with a red pen. The numbers added up fast. Months of savings gone, pension deposits emptied, and even my emergency account drained. He had left just enough money to make sure I wouldn't notice right away. He wanted time to cover his tracks, but he didn't count on how careful I've always been. I kept every receipt, every piece of mail, every proof of who I was and what was mine. The next morning, I went to the local bank branch. The teller knew me. She used to see me come in every Friday for small withdrawals. When she checked the account and saw the transfers, she called the branch manager. He printed everything out. Page after page, the trail was clear. The same name, the same signature, the same lie repeated over and over. He told me it was a case for the police and their fraud team. I took the printouts and thanked him. I went home and made copies of everything. I put one set in a folder for the bank, another for the police, and one for myself. Then I took the originals to my lawyer, an old friend who handled my estate years ago. He read through the pages quietly, his finger tracing each transaction. When he was done, he looked at me and said one word: theft. He explained what would happen next: a formal complaint, a fraud case, and a legal freeze on all accounts connected to my name. We filed the paperwork that same day. The police opened an investigation, and my lawyer began sending notices to the banks involved. Within 48 hours, they found matching withdrawals from his account, the exact amounts that had vanished from mine. He hadn't even tried to hide it properly. The arrogance was his biggest mistake. He thought I was too old to notice, too weak to fight, too tired to care. He was wrong on all three. By the end of that week, my case had evidence, dates, and verified proof. The investigator assigned to my file said I had everything needed to press full charges. They told me to be patient. I was. Every call, every report, every meeting was another nail in the coffin of his freedom. I didn't need revenge that night. I just needed to know that justice had started moving. At home, I cleaned the kitchen table and stacked the papers neatly in one pile. I looked at them for a long time. Those documents weren't just evidence. They were the truth, written in numbers and ink. He had stolen from me, but he couldn't steal the facts. The paper trail was solid, the kind that couldn't be erased, even if he tried to run. I didn't tell anyone what was happening. Let him believe I had given up. Let him think the old man had finally broken. Because while he was out celebrating his upcoming wedding, I was building something stronger than anger. A legal trap that would catch him exactly where he thought he was safest. The day I chose to act was the one he'd been bragging about for months, his wedding day. He wanted it to be big, loud, and perfect. A ballroom, hundreds of guests, luxury cars lined up outside. Every photo he posted online showed him standing tall like a man who had built everything with his own hands. I watched those posts quietly from my small apartment. Each smile of his made my decision clearer. I didn't want revenge out of hate. I wanted truth to show itself, and this day would be the best stage for it. That morning, I put on my cleanest shirt and my old black jacket. I looked in the mirror and saw someone who didn't look like a victim anymore. I had spent months gathering evidence, working with the police, and letting them trace every stolen cent. The investigators had finished their work. The arrest warrant was ready. All it needed was the right moment. I told them where to meet me, outside the wedding hall at noon. When I arrived, everything looked like a movie set. The red carpet stretched across the steps. Guests walked in holding wrapped gifts, champagne bottles, and phones for photos. I stood near the entrance with two police officers dressed in plain clothes. One nodded when he saw me. He said everything was in place. I felt my heart slow down. Not from nerves, from peace. I had waited long enough for this. Inside, the music was loud. People were laughing, talking, eating. My son stood at the front, holding his bride's hand, smiling like a man untouched by guilt. He didn't see me at first. He was too busy enjoying the attention, thanking guests and posing for photos. But when I stepped forward into the light, his eyes met mine. The smile froze. His face went pale. He looked around, confused, like he couldn't believe I was there. The officers followed my lead. They moved in silently, showing their badges. The music faded as whispers spread across the hall. People turned their heads, unsure of what was happening. The bride's family looked alarmed. I didn't say a word. I didn't have to. The officer read his name aloud, confirmed the charges: fraud, theft, forgery. He tried to laugh it off, but the sound died in his throat. He dropped the ring he was holding. It rolled across the floor, ringing like a bell in the silence. Guests stood frozen. Phones came out. Cameras clicked. He started shaking his head, stepping back, mumbling something no one could hear. Then he looked at me, not with anger, but with panic. He understood now that this wasn't a mistake. The papers were real. The warrant was real. Everything he stole had led to this moment. The bride started crying. Her family stepped aside, embarrassed and furious. The crowd moved back as the officers took his arms and turned him around. He looked smaller than I remembered, not the man who once stood above me, mocking my age. Now he was just a thief in a tuxedo. I stood there as they led him out past the guests and cameras. Not once did I raise my voice or say anything cruel. I didn't need to. The truth was louder than anything I could have said. He had stolen my life's work, but I took back something far greater, his pride. That was the moment he learned that no matter how high you climb on lies, you will always fall when truth knocks on the door. The room was silent when the police took him away. The music had stopped, the laughter was gone, and every guest stood frozen in disbelief. Plates sat half full on the tables. The smell of food filled the air, but no one moved. The bride was crying, sitting on the floor with her makeup smeared. Her family whispered among themselves, unsure what to do. The photographers lowered their cameras. The hall that was supposed to be filled with celebration now felt like a courtroom. The air was heavy with shock and shame. I didn't rush after them. I just stood still, watching as they led him through the doors. The same doors I once carried him through as a child when he came home from school crying because someone had hurt his feelings. I used to be the one who protected him from the world. Now I was the one showing the world who he truly was. It didn't feel good, but it felt right. Some guests started whispering my name, realizing who I was. A few came up to me quietly, asking if it was true. I didn't answer. The truth was written all over their faces. They could see it, the fear, the embarrassment, the disbelief. Some of his friends looked angry, as if I had ruined their day. They didn't know that the man they called their friend had built his entire lifestyle on stolen money. They didn't know the nights I went hungry while he bragged about buying another car. The bride's father approached me. His eyes were cold. He asked me if I had planned this. I nodded once. There was nothing else to say. He looked at me for a long moment, then turned away. I knew that wedding was finished before it even began. No vows, no marriage, no future. My son had destroyed it all himself, not me. The police car outside had its lights flashing. I could see it through the big glass doors. He sat in the back seat, head down, hands cuffed. The sight should have made me proud, but it didn't. It made me tired, because no father ever dreams of watching his son taken away in handcuffs. But some lessons only come when pride is stripped bare in front of everyone. Inside the hall, people slowly began to leave. The chatter grew louder as they walked past me, whispering and shaking their heads. Some looked at me with sympathy, others with fear. Nobody clapped, nobody smiled. The celebration was over. The lights that had been bright minutes ago now felt harsh and cold. I walked to the empty front row and sat down. The flowers that decorated the stage were already starting to wilt under the heat. I thought about how easily things had turned. One morning, I was an old man who had been robbed by his own son. Now, I was the man who had brought that thief to justice in front of the whole world. It wasn't victory I felt. It was closure. The kind that hurts but heals at the same time. Before I left, I looked once more at the seat where he had been standing, smiling proudly just an hour ago. It was empty now, except for the ring he had dropped. It lay there, catching the light, spinning slowly until it stopped. That small, silent ring was the only thing left of his pride. I turned around and walked out of the hall. Cameras flashed as I stepped outside, but I didn't stop. I wasn't there for fame or pity. I was there because a father who gives everything deserves to get his dignity back, even if it comes on his son's wedding day. When the police finally read him his rights outside the hall, the crowd followed in silence. The flashing red and blue lights bounced off the marble walls, washing over the expensive decorations, the photographers, and the guests who had come to celebrate a wedding. No one said a word. Everyone just watched. He stood there frozen, hands behind his back, the same hands that had stolen my signature, my savings, and my trust. For a moment, he tried to keep his head high, but when the officer read the full list of charges, fraud, forgery, and theft, his confidence shattered. He dropped to his knees on the concrete. I stood a few steps away, not saying a thing. The air was cold, and the wind carried the sound of his breathing, short, shaky, desperate. He looked at me, eyes wide, lips trembling. But I didn't move. It was strange seeing the man who once called me weak now shaking like a child. He tried to speak, but his voice cracked. The officer told him to stand up. He couldn't. His knees gave out completely. The same people who once looked at him with respect now stared at him with disgust. One of the police officers handed me a copy of the report. Everything was listed clearly: the dates, the stolen sums, the forged documents. It was all official now. No more guessing. No more lies. My son had become a criminal, and the law had finally caught up. I didn't take pleasure in it. I didn't smile. But I felt something lift off my shoulders. The weight of being powerless was gone. The bride stood by the doorway, crying. Her white dress was stained from where she had fallen when the officers came in. Her family tried to comfort her, but she couldn't look at anyone. Her dream wedding had turned into a public scandal. Her groom wasn't walking her down the aisle. He was being led away in handcuffs. Guests whispered her name, taking pictures, recording videos. There was no stopping it now. As they helped him up, he looked at me again. This time, there was no pride in his eyes, just fear. Real fear. The kind that comes when someone realizes they've run out of places to hide. He mouthed something I couldn't hear, probably asking for forgiveness or mercy. But I wasn't there to play the father anymore. I was there as the man he stole from. The officer guided him to the car and opened the door. He stumbled once before getting inside. The cuffs clinked against the door frame as they shut him in. I watched through the window as he turned his head away from the cameras. The same cameras he once used to show off his new car and vacations were now showing him as a criminal. The irony didn't escape me. When the car pulled away, the guests started leaving one by one. The music inside had been turned off completely. All that was left was the sound of whispers and camera clicks. Reporters began to gather outside the gates, asking questions. I didn't answer any of them. I just stood there until the police car was out of sight. Then I took a slow breath and turned back toward the hall. The ring he dropped earlier was still on the ground. I picked it up, wiped the dust off, and looked at it. A shiny band, expensive, flawless, just like the life he pretended to have. I put it in my pocket. Not as a keepsake, but as a reminder. A reminder that greed can destroy anything, even blood ties. That night, I went home to my quiet house and sat by the window. For the first time in years, I felt calm. Justice didn't bring joy, but it brought balance. I didn't destroy his life. He did that himself. I just made sure everyone saw it happen. The days after the arrest were quiet, but not peaceful. News of the wedding spread everywhere. Local papers, social media, even the evening news. The headlines called it, "The Groom in Handcuffs." Photos of him kneeling outside the hall went viral. Every outlet repeated the same story, how a man stole his father's life savings and was arrested during his own wedding ceremony. People who once called to congratulate him now stayed silent. Friends unfollowed him. Business partners backed out of deals. The world turned its back, just like he once turned his back on me. The bride's family canceled everything. They packed up the decorations, shut down the hall, and refused to return his calls. They said their daughter had been humiliated and wanted nothing more to do with him. The expensive wedding rings were returned, the cake was thrown away, and the photos were deleted. What was supposed to be the happiest day of his life became the first day of his downfall. I didn't go to the court hearing that week. My lawyer went for me. He said my son looked thin, tired, and defeated. He had been denied bail because the police proved he transferred money overseas under false names. The prosecutor listed every transaction and played video footage from the bank cameras. There was no way out. He confessed before the hearing even ended. When my lawyer told me that, I didn't feel victory, just emptiness. Because when you raise a child, you don't dream about seeing them punished. You dream about seeing them grow, succeed, and do right. But when that dream turns into betrayal, justice is the only way to breathe again. Neighbors started talking. Some came by to check on me. They said they had seen the videos and were sorry. A few even admitted they'd believed his lies, that I was forgetful, that I mishandled money. Now they knew the truth. They brought food, offered rides, and said they respected me for standing up for myself. I didn't need their sympathy, but I appreciated their honesty. The house felt lighter after that. For years, I kept photos of him around, graduation pictures, holidays, his wedding invitation that I was never meant to attend. I took them all down. I put them in a box and stored it in the attic. Not out of anger, but because I didn't want reminders of what he'd become. Sometimes love for a child becomes heavy, and the only way to survive is to set it down. His friends stopped by once, hoping to convince me to forgive him. They said he was sorry. They said he cried in his cell and wanted another chance. I listened quietly, but I didn't answer. I didn't forgive or hate him. I simply didn't care anymore. That's the thing about betrayal. It doesn't leave anger behind. It leaves silence. Weeks passed, and his name disappeared from the news. People moved on. The city forgot. But I remembered. I still had the same kitchen table where I built the case, the same documents, the same red pen marks that told the story of what he did. I never threw them away. They were the record of how truth can defeat lies without violence or shouting. Every night before bed, I said one quiet thank you. Not to anyone in particular, just to life for letting me live long enough to see the truth come full circle. I wasn't rich anymore, but I had my dignity back. And that was worth more than any bank account. He spent months behind bars, and when he finally got out, he had nothing left. No job, no home, no family waiting for him. People who once cheered him now crossed the street when they saw him. He learned the same way I did. When you steal trust, you lose everything that matters. When it was finally over, I didn't feel revenge. I felt quiet. The kind of quiet that comes after a long storm when the sky clears, but the ground is still wet. The noise was gone. No shouting, no lies, no calls from people pretending to care. Just silence, the good kind. I started waking up early again, making my own coffee, sweeping the porch, and feeding the birds that came to my window. Life became small, simple, and honest. I didn't need much anymore, just peace. I used the money the police recovered to fix my old house and settle what debts I had left. I didn't touch the rest. It stayed in the bank under my name only. No co-signers, no access for anyone else. I learned my lesson the hard way. Trust is not given, it's earned. I had given mine freely, and it almost destroyed me. Now, every decision was my own, and every dollar I spent was earned again through patience. Sometimes I'd see his name in small updates from my lawyer. He was working small jobs, trying to start over, living alone. They said he'd tried to reach out, but I told them not to pass any messages. I didn't need apologies. You can't rebuild respect with words. You rebuild it with actions, and his actions had already spoken loud enough. Holidays came and went. I spent them at home, cooking for myself, sometimes taking food to the local shelter. The people there didn't know who I was. They just saw an old man bringing warm meals, and that was enough. I didn't tell them my story. They didn't need to know that the man handing out bread once had it stolen from his own table. One winter morning, a letter came in the mail. It was from him. The handwriting was shaky. He said he had nothing, that he was sorry, that he wanted to make things right. I didn't open it all the way. I folded it back and placed it in the same box with the old photos. Some things are better left unread when you already know what they say. That evening, I sat on the porch watching the sunset. The street was quiet, the air cool, the sky turning orange. I thought about everything. The work, the betrayal, the courtroom, the flashing lights, the moment he fell to his knees. And I realized something simple. I didn't win because I punished him. I won because I survived him. He tried to destroy my life for money, but I still had my name, my house, and my dignity. That's what mattered. You can rebuild savings, but not respect. And I had earned mine back one slow, painful step at a time. Every night, before I turn off the lights, I look at that ring I picked up at the wedding, the one he dropped before the arrest. It sits on a small shelf by the window. It's not a trophy. It's a reminder. Every time I see it, I remember the price of greed and the cost of forgetting where you came from. Now I live quietly, alone but free. No noise, no debt, no shame. Just peace that money can't buy and family can't fake. And if he ever learns that lesson, maybe one day he'll find peace too. But not with my help. Final thought. He stole my savings, my trust, and my name. I took them all back without raising my voice. Some fathers teach their sons how to live. Others have to teach them what it means to lose everything.